All right, so as we continue blending these layers together, I'm still only blending the background. And yet I've already done 5 different layers. I have the sun, I have what I called the tombstones, I have the stormy sky, I have this other sky, I have the elephant rock and the arches. So I'm doing a little bit more reference sources than I need, but I'm really trying to make it my own image. So I have this idea that came up that maybe I can make this tower shape out of the rock. And I can. I just simply have to kind of erase away from it in a really thoughtful way. And I like how the sunlight's spilling through. So I'm going to take it down to a really low opacity, soft eraser. Really soft, so that light quality comes through. And then as I erase through, I'm letting that rocky texture transition. It's also safer for me to do this in the background than it is for me to try to do it with a foreground element. Look how much sharper in contrast that is. But as things go into the far background, they're a lot less distinct. I'm going to erase this bit of sky that's in there on a different layer. Good. See if there's anything else interfering with it. All right. So I'm erasing from the sun layer. You can also label your layers. If you're having trouble keeping track of one, you can always rename it by double-clicking. So I might call this Sun Tower. And you can also label layers by giving them a color. By right-clicking around the eye, you can label them with certain colors so they're easier to identify. That can be very helpful if you keep losing track of things. I need to find out where this distortion is coming from. It's from some layer above. Huh. Oh, it's I see. I see what's going on. It's because with my tombstone layer, it has an opening in it, and that opening is showing through. So instead of getting a rock texture, I'm getting the sky texture behind that tower. So I might turn this into a tower ruin instead of a complete tower, and that could work just as well. So as I'm erasing away from my sun tower here, I might switch to the full erase. For parts of it. And I also need to transition its sky. So the sun tower has a lot of sky here that I don't necessarily want to use. Maybe I want to use a little bit more than that. So let me cut off the sharp edges. There we go. And then do our blending trick. I'll start with a really soft, 100% opaque eraser, but really big. Kind of ghost it at the edges. See how effective it is. I like the little wispy cloud there, so maybe I can keep a little bit of that. I actually like how it masks the darkness up here. So now we get to another blending tool. And this is called the clone stamp. So the goal is I want to take some of this texture over here and paint it on top of these storm clouds up here. So how do I do that? I use this tool that's 2 above the eraser. It's called the clone stamp tool. Just to show you how it works, I'll start with an opacity of 100 and a brush that's really soft, hardness of 0, pretty large. And what I do is I have to target where I want to clone stamp from. And so I'm going to extend this sky over to this side. So I'm going to target here by holding down the Option button. It gives me a little target, and then I click. And that shows me that when I paint, it's going to copy the pixels from over here wherever I paint them. So I start painting. I'm painting at 100%. So it's doing a lot of pixel replacing there, right? So for transitioning, instead of painting at 100%, I want to paint at a lower opacity with a soft brush, like maybe 20%. Start here, start painting in. And that will just give me, it works great for clouds, mist, subtle textures. And what it's doing, notice that the target travels with me too. So if I go too far, I'll be cloning the tower. And that's not what I want. But I can extend a lot of this texture in the sky over to blend it into my other sky. Get a little bit more color around it. Okay, I can also use Clone Stamp to effectively erase this tower to make it into a ruin while still keeping the sky color in the same layer. So for instance, I can take this, make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to say sample all layers so that what I see is what I get with the clone stamp. I'm not looking at opacity or blanks. I'm going to do it at a slightly lower opacity so I can build it up. Slightly softer, just to start with. I'm going to copy from here, and I'm going to start painting this tower out. Again, I'm not actually painting. I'm just using the pixels from another location, blending them over. So this is a wonderful tool, especially for building atmosphere. And I'm able to erase the tower while replacing it with the sky that was already around the tower. And it's fun to be really dainty about this. But if I really want to make some difference, I have to be a little bit more hardcore. Once I understand the tool, I can go to a stronger opacity. I can go to a harder edge. And I can just get it done. And then worry about softening it later. All right, so my tower ruin is kind of shaped. I'll work with it a little bit more. If I just switch back to the current layer now, oh, that's a little too strong, at a lower opacity, then I can soften some of that work. Even lower opacity. Little goes a long way. it's atmospheric perspective, that the further things go back in the distance, the softer they are. The more the edges kind of blur together and everything recedes towards a middle gray. That's why I wouldn't do this kind of softening on foreground elements. Only background. And we'll get a lot more practice with the clone stamp when we're doing our next assignment, which is where we composite a creature together. Because when you're having to composite different textures together, like feathers and fur and scales, you find yourself being a lot more creative with how you blend and make new textures possible. But here it's fun to be able to change the light source so dramatically here. It's just hard to keep track of what is on what layer. Okay, so it's beginning to look okay. I go back to my eraser and I start, whoops, taking away more from this sun tower. Not at 100% though, very low levels, letting the other layers show through. And why do we have so many history states? So if we change our mind about something, it's easy to go back. All right. Now there's a lot more in that layer that needs to be transitioned, right? But the sky's looking pretty good. I'm not crazy about this temple yet, but I'm going to find things to replace that with. Okay. Save it. Now we have to bring in some of this foreground and this more of this middle ground. So I had a filler piece in here called the bedrock. And you'll need filler pieces every once in a while to help transition. I believe this was my filler piece. And I think I want to flip it. No, I don't want to flip it. Never mind. With organic things like this, you can even play with distorting them somewhat, like squishing them, changing them around. So it kind of matches the flow of what you already have. I'm going to use my magic wand, get all of this sky away, hold down Shift to add to it, and delete. I definitely don't want the guy there, so I'm going to soften these edges, work around the guy, delete that, maybe work around some of these edges. Now I want to use adjustments like color balance, get a little bit more red in there. It's closer to the sun, so maybe a little bit more yellow and magenta. In the highlights, a little bit more yellow. I just love this tool. And then actually, in the shadows, maybe a little bit more blue.